Hello, Dennis Snow. Welcome to the DoingCXRight show.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's way overdue because we met in person a year ago, and I can't even get over that a year has gone by, but
Yeah.
never too late.
That's right. That's right. It's good to connect with you again.
Yes. So please share, Dennis, what do you do professionally with the audience?
Sure. Well, I do consulting and speaking primarily. I spent 20 years with Walt Disney World here in Orlando. I live in Orlando, here in Orlando. I spent 20 years there, and I used that as a foundation for working with organizations of all types on the customer experience. How do they deliver that world-class experience? And I used my Disney background as a foundation for that. But I've been doing this for 25 years now. When I left Disney, I started this on a chance, and I took a chance on it and been doing it for 25 years now, which is amazing. I've done this longer than I worked at Disney.
You took a chance. I want people to stop and think about that for their own life because, someone told me that last year when corporate left me, and they said, Stacy, it's time to bet on you. And I'm like, bet on you, take a chance.
That's a good way to say it. And my wife and I, we started this together, and it really was a gamble. And thankfully, it worked out beautifully. But I was ready to go back to Disney if I had to.
Well, we know about Disney. What else is a fun fact, Dennis, that people might not know about you?
Well, my wife and I, years ago, we used to have a magic act that we did. And so I was a magician. I was a magician. And there's a good reason that I'm not a magician anymore. I wasn't very good at it. I can fool my grandkids. That's my claim to fame now, is I can fool my grandkids, but that's about it. But that's probably the most fun fact is that I used to do magic shows.
So your grandkids are great customers.
They at least put up with me. They act like they're fooled. Maybe they're not, but they act like they are. So because they know I'm going to buy them something. Yeah.
See, they're very smart.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of young ones, what would you tell younger you if you could go back to the 20-year-old Dennis? What would you say based on what you know now that you didn't know then?
Yeah, I was in college for 20 years. I was actually very fortunate. I went to the University of Central Florida, and I had a professor. I was a business major, and I had a professor who said something that just has stayed with me. And I would tell any 20-year-old this, anybody that's kind of new in the workplace. He said, look at whatever job you have, look at it as training for owning your own company. And I thought that was really good advice because it made me look at my jobs, the different jobs that I had, from a different perspective. Not just from the task side of things, but how does it fit into the overall? And I recommend that to people all the time that are starting out with new jobs. Look at it as training, even if you don't have your own company. You never do it. You'd still look at what you do from a more holistic perspective. But that has served me very well because who knew? At some point, I did have my own company, and that was great advice. Dr. Komish, I'll never forget him.
Oh.
It was a long time ago. It was 1981. Yeah.
Never forget him.
Yeah.
Well, okay. How does a company become unforgettable?
How does a company become unforgettable?
Somebody impacted your life.
Yeah.
Companies can do that.
I think that when I think of customer experience, and I like the whole idea that it's evolved from customer service to customer experience because that includes everything. And I've thought about this quite a bit. For me, it's everything is for a company. Everything is designed and delivered in a way that makes a customer think, that was great. Why can't everybody do it like they do it? I think if you have that in your mind, you're going to be loyal. If you're thinking that way, you're going to be loyal. And so what that means is that all of the various elements of that relationship, the various ways we interact, and which is different for every organization. But every one of them has to be designed that way to make somebody think or tell somebody, that was great. Why can't everybody do it like they do? And to me, which sounds simple, but it's not easy. It's a simple concept, but executing is challenging. Make it part of the culture. But that's what Disney did. That's one of the things I really appreciated about Disney is they weren't selling rides; they were selling an overall experience. They were selling everything from the time you started planning your trip there to the time you left, everything in between. That's the product. And so it makes you think about beyond the rides, all of the various things that are involved in a Disney experience. How do you make it so people say, well, that was really good. Why can't everybody do it like they do?
Now, you talked about an impactful person years ago.
Right.
I think you said that was a teacher?
Yeah, I was a professor, Dr. Comish.
Professor.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a professor. You talk about Disney. I see a very common thread here, which is leaving a lasting impression.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you want people to leave and be ready to talk about you, in a good way, talk about you in a good way. And so that lasting impression it's those things that are just, I like to call them moments of wow, which sometimes we think of wows as these huge, extraordinary gestures, which are great. But I think it's those little things that make somebody just feel, oh, that was nice. I appreciate how that person did it. Even if you're on the telephone with somebody, you can tell when it's a genuine, authentic conversation versus they're just putting you through the mill. They're just churning you through their script. And it's no more time, it's no more money. It's just that authenticity where when you're done with that interaction, that was nice. Yeah, I really like that person. If you can get people thinking that way, it's going to be memorable. It's going to be memorable. And the likelihood is then, which is the name of the game, they're going to come back. They're going to keep doing business with you.
What do you think is the underlying reason that it seems so intuitive? And as you said before, the execution is the problem. So, how does everybody create a Disney experience? And that sounds like a huge question.
Yeah, I know. And one of the things I like to remind people is you're not trying to be Disney. Is you can take the principles and apply them to what you want. And so that leads to what I think is one of the key things that's missing is that so many organizations, they design their processes for their own convenience and not for the customer. They don't think about the customer. They don't see it through the lens of the customer. And that's a real problem. And we as customers, we deal with it all the time. I'm sure in the last few years, you've purchased furniture that you had to have delivered to your home, and they tell you be there between 12 and 4 or 11 and 3. That's designed from their convenience. That's designed with their convenience in mind. They're not thinking about the person who has to take off work and be home during that window of time. Or the phone tree, the phone tree that you get into, press this for this, press this for this, and you finally work your way through it and you get voicemail or you get disconnected, and those things are all designed for the company's purposes, not for the customers. One of the things that I appreciate when I go back to Disney now is the place is complicated. It's just massive now. There's so many moving parts to it. When you're a guest there's so many things involved. And one of the things that they've done is in all the parks, they put these guest service kiosks that are staffed by cast members. So if you have a question or an issue, which you will, just because of the place, you're going to, boom, there's somebody that can help you right away. And if they don't have the answer, they have radios that they can get the answer to. To me, that's a example of let's look at this from the perspective of the customer, or in this case, the guest convenience, and how can we make it excellent for them? And so that's where I see a gap in many organizations is they think things through from their own perspective and not from the lens of the customer.
Hmm. Do you watch or have you seen Undercover Boss?
Oh, of course. Yes. Yes. What a great show. Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody can really be an undercover boss in their own
Yeah.
company.
You just have to experience as a customer.
Yeah.
If you have a helpline, call the helpline. See what happens.
Yeah.
See how responsive they are. See how friendly they are. How helpful they are. Go into if it's a store, go into the store as a shopper. Just say, tell your people, don't pay any attention to me. I'm just doing this as a customer. Have friends shop it. But one of the things a hospital that I worked with did, and I thought this was great, all the senior executives in this hospital had to get on gurneys as they rolled them through just looking up at the ceiling, looking at, and so you're basically seeing the face of the person that's wheeling you around in the ceiling. And they said, this is not what we want to present, and so they did all kinds of different things to make that at least a more positive experience. But I thought, what a great idea of seeing what your patients see. So yeah, absolutely, shop your own thing. One of the things that we did, and it was a benefit, but I think it benefited the company as well, is when as a cast member you got passes that you could bring your family into the park. Well, that was a great benefit, but you also looked at things. You also saw, okay, there's trash over there in the corner, or that light is burned out there. And so because you're literally seeing it from the guest perspective.
The important part of this, though, is it's one thing for you to notice the trash. It's
Mhm.
another thing for employees to go pick it up.
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent point. I think you would agree with me on this, that world-class organizations have non-negotiables when it comes to the customer experience. And, because a brand is such a fragile thing, we have to have things that are non-negotiable. That as a member of this team and at Disney, that's one of the things. You see a piece of trash on the ground. It doesn't matter if you're a ride operator or the vice president of marketing. You go over and pick it up and throw it away. And interestingly enough, the number one compliment that they get is how clean the place is. That is the number one compliment that they get. Well, that's why. It's a behavior that's ingrained into you. And it gets weird after a while because you do start doing it in other places. When you leave, you have to kind of wean yourself off of that because you do it in other places. But that's really what you want, where it's part of the culture.
I love this conversation because I'm writing a book right now
Oh, good.
about journey management, and
Oh, okay. We can touch on that. Yeah.
so it goes way beyond journey mapping.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of me saying this is that a key problem in companies and correlating it to the trash is that people don't understand that they have a CX job.
Right.
And so what they'll do with that trash is they'll say, well, that's not my job. That's
Mm-hmm.
the other guy's job. And everybody points fingers the other way,
Right.
and then nobody does it.
Yeah. So the solution, and there's no 100% solution, but let's say the 95% solution is you have to build those non-negotiables into everything. So like the picking up trash, you have to hire people who are wired for attention to detail. That's got to be part of the hiring process. That attention to detail is one of the things that you're looking for when you're onboarding people. That has to be part of it. That this is why we do these things. This is why we pick up trash. So it's okay. Okay, I get it. Now, when you're on the job training, you're getting your side by side, or however your company does on the job training. It needs to weave into that. It needs to weave into the accountability processes. It needs to weave into the recognition processes, communication. So you take all of the things that impact an employee, and you have to build those things into it. And that's how you make sure that people are doing it versus saying, we want you to pick up trash. Okay. You say, we want you to pick up trash. Some people are going to do it. Most people are not, or they'll do it when they feel like it. My perspective is, no, there are certain things that are so valuable to the brand. We all have to do it. And we want to do it because we respect the brand that much.
That's the key. people feel that they want to do it, not need to do it.
Right.
And companies that can create that kind of culture absolutely have the staff loyalty and the customer
Mhm.
loyalty.
Can I give you a exercise that I often do with clients? It's a pretty simple exercise, but I think one of the problems is that many organizations, they haven't really defined what they want the customer experience to be. They've kind of put together a group of tasks to sell their product, which is an important thing. I mean, but that's what they've done. They haven't really thought through, what do we want the experience to be? So one of the things that I often do with clients is I say, what are 3 things that you would want your customers to say about their experience with you? And if you zero in on 3 things, that makes you focus. That makes you think, okay, what's really important to us if we're going to have loyal customers? So 3 things. Once you have that, then the next part is, so what has to happen in order for them to say those 3 things? So at Disney, it was a magical experience. They paid attention to every detail, and they made us feel special. We knew if they said those 3 things, they were going to come back. So, and tell other people about their experience. And so if we want people to say they pay attention to every detail, then it only makes sense that if you see a piece of trash on the ground, you go over and pick it up and throw it away. It fits perfectly into that desire. If we want guests to say they made us feel special, well, if you see a guest getting ready to take a photograph of their family, go over to them and say, hey, can I take the photo for you? So that you can be in the picture too. Because most families have a designated photographer, that never appears in the photos. So it all makes sense then, but it goes back to, let's define what we want that experience to be. And then you talked about the journey. You take that and you build it into all elements of the journey. Now you really have something.
You said something also incredibly important about taking the photograph so someone can be with their family in the picture.
Right.
And the thing that stands out to me about that is it's the proactive approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Proactive and authentic. I would put those together. And that goes back to what you said earlier, too, about wanting. You were talking about the people want to do it. When your employees are engaged, and I mean true engagement, they want to do these things. And that's our role as leaders, I think, is to at least increase the likelihood that our people are engaged. And that takes commitment to do that. That takes sitting down with your teams and your regular huddles or meetings or whatever you want to call them, and having them share. Somebody give me an example of something you did to wow a customer. Where a customer just said, wow, and give me an example. And so you get people thinking this way, and it engages them in the purpose of what they do beyond the tasks of what they do. And I think that's true engagement, when people want to do these things.
I would say it's engagement, and now actually something more important that I'm really hanging my hat on, which is empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm engaged in everything I do. But when I was in corporate, if I wasn't empowered to do what
Right.
I really want to deliver excellence, then I couldn't.
Right. Right. And that's another commitment from management, is not everybody's going to want to do things exactly the way you want to. And so you don't want a bunch of robots out there. So yes, we have to let people make mistakes and adjust where we need it. But the worst thing is when we tell people we want you to make guests happy, and they do something, so you're not supposed to do that. Okay. Then I'm just waiting for you to tell me what to do. From here on out, I'm just waiting to tell you. Versus you say, hey, I really appreciate the initiative you took on that. Here's another way that might be better just from a time perspective or whatever. Now you're acknowledging their efforts for it and aligning the behavior with where you're trying to go as an organization.
Success obviously is intuitive and measurable.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prove all the things we're talking about. How did Disney know, besides ticket sales?
That's one of them. Yeah, that is one of the measures. Yeah.
But the loyalty, I mean, how did they actually really know for people listening and they're trying to figure out the measurement? What's your view?
Yeah. Well, there's two kinds of measurements. There's the lagging indicator, so ticket sales, net promoter score, employee turnover, repeat visitation. They can track all of that, and which is important because you want to move those needles, right? So you can prove in the long term that if you're delivering an outstanding experience, you're going to increase loyalty, you're going to decrease employee turnover, you're going to move those needles. But that takes time to do, and a lot of different things impact that. One of the things that I think is a real opportunity are the day-to-day behavioral measures. And here's what I mean by that. There was a hotel that I worked with one time, and they were having an issue with, they had a 3:00 check-in time, and many rooms were not ready by 3:00. So certainly you had guests who were upset, and this is the beginning of their stay at the hotel. Their room isn't ready. So they went to housekeeping, and the initial thinking, response would be, well, we need to tell our housekeepers to clean faster, or maybe hire more housekeepers, but we need to do this quicker, which would have resulted in, there was friction between the front desk and housekeeping because the front desk had to deal with the issue because housekeeping didn't have all the rooms ready. So what they did was they brought them together and said, okay, what is happening here? Why aren't the rooms ready? And they did a little bit of research. And what they found out was the number one reason that many rooms weren't ready at 3:00 was because of new guests checking in, asking for additional towels in their room. So housekeepers had to bring additional towels, which kept them from cleaning the other rooms. And that's where the gap was. So clearly, just by having this conversation and engaging the front desk and the housekeeping team, they decided, let's just add 2 more towels to every room. When we get a room ready, let's just add 2 more towels. Solve the problem. Rooms were ready by 3:00. Guests were happy. And to me, that's really looking at what, in this case, why aren't rooms ready? Okay, these rooms weren't ready today because we had 10 times where guests called for additional towels. All right, what can we do about that? Simple solution, put more towels in the room. That to me is I worked with a bank one time and they wanted to improve the in-lobby experience. And they met with the tellers and everybody, and they said, what can we do? And they said, well, one of the things that people really seem to like is when we remember them by name, when they come in and remember them by name. Okay, let's have a little tick sheet at each desk. And anytime you can remember a customer's name, you can greet them by name, make a little tick mark, and we'll keep track of how good we're getting at that. And they started sharing techniques for remembering names, and they made it kind of a fun thing. And they would post, today we remembered this many, remember this many, which is not a scientific measurement by any stretch, but it got people remembering customers' names, which is important. And you know how it feels when you go into a business and they say, hey, Stacy, how are you? You feel like family.
Absolutely.
And it was a wonderful unscientific measurement that directly impacted behavior and ultimately would impact net promoter score and all of the other things.
Mm. Well, as we're getting to the end, rapid fire questions for you.
We are. Yeah, we are. Wow.
It goes fast on this show.
Yeah.
Well, what is the one takeaway you want people to remember today?
So I believe we overcomplicate things. And so what I would ask people to remember is, and I'm going to put myself in the role of a customer. I want 3 things from any company that I deal with. I want you to do the job right. I want you to be easy to do business with. And I want you to be nice to me. Those 3 things. And you can say nice could be, make me feel valued, whatever's appropriate for your industry. I keep things simple. So, do it right, be easy to work with, be nice to me. if you do those three things consistently, I am going to beat a path to your door. I'm going to pass by all the other options that are out there for any product or service. If you do those three things right and you do them consistently. So that's what I would ask people, just to don't overcomplicate it. Now, again, the execution takes a lot of commitment, a lot of time, but don't overcomplicate what you're trying to accomplish.
And it requires breaking company silos.
Oh, yeah.
For that execution. But that's another show, another day.
Yeah.
And leaders listening who own the culture, who have the ability and empowerment, hopefully, to create the Disney experience where they work, what's your advice to them?
Just get everybody thinking in terms, we're not selling products, we're selling experiences. If you can just repeat that mantra over and over, and model that in your own behavior, every interaction that you have. One of the most powerful pictures I have ever seen. I wish I could show it right now. There's a picture from 1959 at Disneyland of Walt Disney picking up trash at Disneyland. That's worth its weight in training gold, to see your Walt Disney, if that's you or whoever it is, doing those things to create a great customer experience. So modeling those behaviors, talking the experience, and being relentless around it.
There's a lot of trash talk this episode.
I'm obsessed.
And I will look at trash in a whole new light. And I think there's a lot of gold in the trash. And may we all start picking up trash, whether you're in the C-suite or back office or front line in Disney style.
Well, thank you, Stacy. This was wonderful. I really had I can't believe we're already at the end time. I appreciate this. Yeah.
Well, I will make sure people can reach you. And it'll be in the show notes and your website and your social media, because this was fabulous. You're fabulous. And I know that people will reach out.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.